Hello, everybody, from the Coconut Grove Seafood Festival. We are back live on Facebook around the world with two amazing coral ladies, amongst other things, because you wear a couple of different hats. So, a quick introduction. So, we're still here at the beautiful and iconic Marine Stadium. Obviously, all of us at the Celebration Sea Foundation are so thrilled to be here in the Eco Discovery Zone with cool, like, critters and things to talk about, right? Oh, that one's actually moving around. Excuse me. So part of what we're going to do today is we remain in the format of keysstrong.org to support the 11,000 families that lost their homes during the hurricane. And we have a very special friend of ours that's going to talk about that. But this particular organization, if you look at folks who are out there with NOAA, which is kind of the broad-reaching organization that helps us protect the reefs and all of that, do you want to talk a little about the organization and the amazing work you guys are doing?
Certainly. I'm Gena Parson, the Communications and Outreach Specialist with the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary, and this is my colleague, Nicole Ubel. She does much of our educational outreach.
And thank you guys so much for volunteering. You drove all the way from Key West. So as you explain this, we have some beautiful images that Fraser Nivens from Ocean Imaging has been shooting and helping us all weekend. So let's talk about the sanctuary and what that means, and so people understand the depth of that.
The Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary is 2,900 nautical miles, covers all of the Florida Keys. So anytime you get in the water in the Florida Keys, you are in a protected area.
Even a toe in the water.
Even a toe.
You're in, yep, okay.
Even a toe. So we'd like people to know how to take care of our resources. That's why we're there. We're communicating that. We're doing the science that says this area is good for fish. This is how you get rid of lionfish, which we will never do, but hopefully we'll control them.
Yes, bad fish.
And they taste really good. And so we're out there doing the science, working with our partners like Coral Restoration Foundation.
So the footage with Ken Niedermeyer and his team.
Yes.
So the beauty is you actually collaborate and work with all these organizations.
We do, and more importantly, they work with us.
Yep.
Any of the work that these organizations do within the sanctuary has to be permitted and approved by us. And they're very gracious in sharing the results of their work with us so that we can form a better way of managing the resources.
So like the gatekeeper, really, right?
Yes.
You manage that?
Yes, but we also want people to be able to get out there and enjoy it because that's part of what the Keys are about, a big part of it.
Critical for the economy, to get down there, dive and fish.
Critical for the economy.
But you manage it and protect it so it's going to be around for a long time, is the issue, right?
That is the idea, yes.
Cool. So when we talk about this critter, there's a lot of talk about that little bad boy. So can you explain? So this probably happened where somebody had one in an aquarium and flushed it down a toilet and ended up out there, and now we have this issue with what we call the lionfish. You want to explain that?
Lionfish are a very invasive species. They eat everything. So just think if you had a relative who showed up at Thanksgiving and gobbled up everything so that nobody else had anything to eat.
Yeah, no off valve, right.
So, and these guys reproduce at such a rapid rate, it's really hard to get a handle on them. But we are encouraging, in fact, the state of Florida encourages people to go out and catch these, eat these. You have to be careful. The spines are venomous. Mm-hmm. So you have to know what you're doing.
So venomous means if you were to
hurts.
somehow it pricked you, basically, and got into your bloodstream, it could become a really bad day.
Nicole has had that.
Oh, did you?
We'll have her explain.
Yes, I was stung. It's been a while, but it was definitely memorable.
Wow. So actually, what was that like? So the venom on the back of the spine, it actually pricked you?
Yep, yeah, he got me right in the hand.
Oh my
when
God.
I was working at an aquarium, so I was cleaning the tank and just got a little bit careless. Got hit in the hand, just a really stinging sensation, and then it spread and was just sort of this aching. However, it's been documented. There's no recorded deaths to lionfish stings, so they're not fatal, but it will definitely be a memorable experience.
Causes a very, very difficult day. I see.
Lots of hot water on there.
So how about the other critter? We've got a spiny lobster there, right?
Yes, this is Larry the lobster, our spiny lobster.
Larry, I get it. Okay. So what's the story with Larry and the importance or relationship between the Keys ecosystem and Larry the lobster?
Well, the hurricane may have displaced some of these guys. We had a bunch of lobster traps lost, tens of thousands of traps lost within the sanctuary and beyond. Yep. And that's really going to hurt the lobster harvest season this year. So the fisheries, that gives you a good example of how Mother Nature works against us many times. The fisheries are being hurt by that this year. And now it's stone crab season, and the fishermen are out wondering if the stone crabs were hurt by that as well. So we will see, but the Florida spiny lobster is a huge product commercially
Big
for
industry.
the Keys.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a big market for it in Asia. That's our largest market for that. So yeah, we're talking lots of money with this little critter here. So we see that there are regulations on it to where the state says you can only take them if they're this big and they can't be females with eggs, so that again the fishery will continue to grow.
So that when you talk about the importance, especially with what happened with the hurricanes to the families down there, the fisheries, in terms of constituting a way that people can make a living and feed their families and get back on their feet, by us supporting and buying the stone crab or the lobsters, we're all helping the families really directly by those purchases, right? So there's
certainly, and visiting the Keys and getting out on the water and eating at the restaurants. Much of the water is still a little churned up, and so there are areas that we don't necessarily recommend you going out in, or if you do, to be very careful. Things have changed. There's still a lot of floating debris. But Key West and Key Largo were not hit nearly as badly as the lower and middle Keys, so those dive operators are out there. The charter fishermen are out there. So we encourage people to come down and start helping refuel that economy.
And so some of the things that you've taught us, which are actually fascinating to us, we were live, we talked about this yesterday. We were live at about, thank you, it was 6 in the morning or something. I had you and the mayors, whoever else on the phone, and our good friends at Entercom on the Shark and the Beach, the Ticket, Light FM. Several of the stations were covering this as they were interviewing you. You talked about the amount of shipwrecks and the buoys that were lost and how everything's kind of changed down there. So none of us have that perspective because you're literally on the front lines of those discussions. Can you talk about those three things? The ships, the buoys, and kind of the topography of what's different down there, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and as you're seeing out here in Miami today, there are ships that are up on their sides. There was a lot of damage. Down in the Keys, Monroe County alone has at least 1,300 sunken vessels. So we are helping advise the Coast Guard that is running point on this in removing those vessels so that more of the fuel does not leak into the environment and do more harm. We don't want them dragging it off and causing harm to the bottom.
So some of them aren't just on the bottom. Some of them are floating around too, right?
They are, and they're up on the shore, and they're everywhere.
Yeah.
They are everywhere.
1,300 potential shipwrecks?
Yes.
And they have the potential with the oil or the gas to be leaking that into the environment.
Or break up and damage the reef.
Yep. So all of that you're trying to monitor and manage. That's one piece. So the shipwrecks one. Yes. And then in terms of the navigation with the buoys and those markers, can you talk about that? Because that was fascinating.
That also is a consolidated effort, state, federal, Monroe County, to go out and see what markers are there. Those aids to navigation are very important. That's the Coast Guard. They are out checking those and replacing. In the sanctuary, we have buoys that tell people where they can and cannot go and what they can and cannot do. For instance, out on the reef, we don't want anyone throwing out an anchor that can damage those sensitive corals. We want them tying up to a mooring ball, and we're still assessing that. We know that we've lost quite a few of those, and so we would ask people to be very careful when they go out and respectful of the environment and do what they can.
And you talked about hundreds maybe that are missing, those mooring balls?
Yes.
So for us as divers, when we look at that little floating white ball looking for a way that the dive boat will clip on, what it's doing is avoiding that every time a dive boat goes out there or somebody just to enjoy the weekend, that they don't have to throw the anchor, which scrapes the coral. And
right.
That particular permanent structure provides a place that continually gives a kind of a way to ground a boat without having to throw an anchor over the side.
Exactly.
So a lot of those are missing.
Yes.
And then lastly, you talked about, which was interesting, because a lot of you know that the Keys like your backhand in terms of where to go and where the sand is or where you can get through. Because of the shifting, and Captain Slade was even saying that the Spiegel Grove had moved, this enormous shipwreck that people dive on. So the actual topography, the bottom, the sand, everything is a little different now, right? So you're trying to figure that out as well?
Mm-hmm. Yes, the waves under the water were as strong as the winds above the water.
Yeah.
So they did a lot of damage. We're still assessing all of that in terms of the reef, but we know there are areas that have been fractured. Some areas have been blown out, but that doesn't mean that the reef won't recover. It means that maybe it has shifted areas, and we'll deal with the science on that. and help people understand it in the long run. But yes, the bottom is changed in many places, so those channels that you used to use may be different now, and in the bag country as well, because it brought a bunch of sand and sediment, which is still out there and still settling, so visibility isn't quite back to what it should be yet either.
So if people wanted more information about the sanctuaries, so National Marine Sanctuaries, it's part of NOAA, which is this amazing organization like NASA, but these are, you go down instead of up, right?
Yes.
So as a,
we are the O in NOAA.
The O in NOAA. So if somebody wanted more information about what's going on with your organization, do you want volunteers or can people help? And
we do volunteers all the time. FloridaKeys.NOAA.gov is our website. Nicole, she coordinates our volunteers and can tell people how to get in touch.
Absolutely. So we always love to have volunteers in all areas of Florida, not just Monroe County, of course here in Miami as well. Events such as these, we'd love to have some community volunteers out here helping us spread the word about the Keys and about the National Marine Sanctuaries. We also do things like beach cleanups, and we love having different volunteers for those. We've had some great interest just from this festival alone, having some really cool team leaders that are going to help us with some of these beach cleanups. And then, of course, working with our different partners as well. So we have all these different partners, not just the nonprofits with Coral Restoration Foundation and Moat Marine Lab, also with our Blue Star partners. So we can involve our volunteers in that way as well, be volunteer divers for us.
So at the site, they can actually click on a link and find you and submit their names and so forth.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah. So on our website, you'll have the staff information pages or the volunteer pages. My email will be on there. You can get in touch with pretty much anyone.
One more time, the website is?
The website is floridakeys.noaa.gov.
So if you want to volunteer, do something super cool. And thank you guys for your time and being here as always.
Thank you for having us here.
We love you and appreciate it. And last, as we close out, because you've been so generous, you also wear this other amazing hat as part of the Rotary, right?
Yes.
And Key West has how many? 3?
3 Rotaries in Key West, 7 throughout all of the Keys.
Right.
And the Rotary clubs do a lot of the civic engagement. We're the people who see a need and try to fill it, which is why we're involved with keystrong.org. This is a long-term recovery on and offshore. So it's important that we have organizations such as this.
Well, thank you. And you were very kind. She showed up literally every time we've asked, including you must have woke up at 5:30 for that last interview to be on the air by 6. But everybody from our side of it, and thank you guys so much for coming. So from the Coconut Grove Seafood Festival live at the iconic Marine Stadium in Miami, stay tuned. We'll be live all day on Facebook. Thank you guys. Rock and roll.